Guys, welcome back to the second last webinar. It's been a ride. Welcome back, Maria, who was here 1 week ago. Today's a hot topic, plant-based eating. If anyone's seen Game Changers, I kind of got things going a little bit. I'm not too sure what team I'm on. I'm on a little bit of both. I see the merit in both on both sides, but hopefully I'm enlightened like everyone else today. Just for housekeeping things, again, the chat box, set it up to speaker view. Any questions in the chat box, I'll bring it to Maria's attention. Also, I'll throw the link to my YouTube channel in the chat box if you guys are interested in seeing any of the past webinars. So maybe Maria, reintroduce yourself for the people that weren't there last week, and then talk to us about plant-based eating.
Okay, Ryan, just a little technical thing. How do I actually put everybody on top versus all over the screen?
You got to go to speaker view. So top right if you're on a laptop, I think.
Okay, I don't want to see you. Okay.
You don't want to see me. Come on now.
Oh, that worked. Okay, that worked.
You're unfortunately going to probably be looking at me and I'll be looking at you. You don't really see yourself as much, but.
No, it's okay. I can look at you, which is fine. All right.
So go for it.
All right, so I'm just gonna let people, I do have notes in front of me to keep me on track. Otherwise, I'm all over the place.
I'll help you with that too.
It's one of these topics I'm actually really passionate about, maybe because there's a huge amount of research, and it's nutrition research, to support the whole idea of plant-based eating. And the first thing is, what is plant-based eating? And really that plant-based eating is just really focusing on incorporating more plant-based foods in your diet. It doesn't necessarily mean vegetarian. However, the nutrition research that supports plant-based eating is all based on a vegetarian diet, a vegan diet, and the Mediterranean diet. So eating plant-based doesn't necessarily mean vegetarian, but the research does support. That's where this terminology came from. So I will use interchangeably vegetarian eating because that's where the research primarily is based on. So when we look at actually Canadians' eating habits right now, only 4% of Canadians classify themselves as either vegetarian or vegan. And about 30 to 36% of North Americans, so that research is a little bit broader, will consider themselves having one vegetarian meal a week. And usually when they define a meal, it's usually a dinner meal.
Yeah.
Right? It's not breakfast or lunch, but it's the biggest meal of the day. So about 30 to 35%. So with people who are on now, maybe you're doing that already. You'll have one vegetarian meal per week. So again, that's dinner. And if not, that's maybe why you're here, is to learn what we should do, how to do it properly, and is it successful. So when we talk about the benefits, there's a variety of benefits to vegetarian eating or plant-based eating. There's the benefits towards environmental as well as health. And those environmental issues, people have chosen to eat plant-based for their personal reason, and when it goes to protecting the environment. So our carbon footprint, we hear that about emission gases out there because of the animals out in the pastures. We know there's a 30% increase because of that. So there are people who have those environmental concerns, have decided to go more plant-based. In terms of other rationales to it, people want to protect for animal health. So they look at the rationale in terms of animal welfare. They want to protect the baby cows out there. They want to protect the sheep. So again, that's a personal decision people make. But when we look at the health issues, we know that following a plant-based way of eating, we know it's associated with a decrease in cardiovascular disease. And partly that's because of controlling our blood cholesterol levels. Hypertension, high blood pressure, is another risk factor to cardiovascular disease. Again, we can decrease that or maintain our blood sugar levels. We also know there's a decreased risk in type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes before it even gets to that, and certain cancers. So the cancers that there's strong research to support plant-based eating is colon cancer and stomach cancers, strong evidence of eating more plant-based. That means incorporating more fruits and vegetables. Okay, so we see that even with the animal agriculture, that it's one of the leading causes to global warming and degradation of the environment. So that's why, that's another rationale why people decide to go more plant-based. There's also religious reasons, as well as there's religious, environmental, health, and economical. Okay, plant-based eating is not something new. It's been around for centuries all over the world. However, in North America, it's become a little trendy. I'd say not even quite 9 years, but at least the last 5 years, there's been a big trend on following more plant-based and even taking it to another element and following a vegan way of eating. So when we talk about vegetarian, there's different types of vegetarian eating. So when you look at the definition of vegetarian, it's the elimination of meat or meat byproducts. Doesn't mean all of them. So when we talk about lacto, it's eliminating milk and milk-based products. Ovo means we can still eat eggs, but we eliminate everything else. Lacto-ovo, that we have milk and eggs, but we've eliminated all meat, fish, and poultry. And there's pescatarian, which you will include only fish. And there's a new terminology out there now that's called the flexitarian vegetarian, which those are people who are flexible around vegetarian eating, that occasionally they will have meat couple of days a week, or that flexitarian is also the semi-vegetarian individual. To the extreme is called vegan, and that vegan is an individual who removes all animal sources, including byproducts. Okay, and those byproducts could be that little bit of cheese that you sprinkle on your pasta, your Parmesan cheese. It could be the eggs that are used in baked products. So there are some vegans that will not even use any eggs, and they're great substitutes to using eggs in baked products. And when people need information like that, that's why they come to me. How do I substitute eggs? If I want to make muffins, I want to make some pancakes, there are ways of doing that. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about the benefits. We talked about the types of diets that people follow. So what are the key nutrients? But before I jump into the nutrients, I just want to show you, when we talk about plant-based or vegetarian eating, what does that mean? It's not only fruits and vegetables, it's beans. Canned beans, I don't know if people can see that, a variety of products there. Yep. And parts, yep. Right?
I got them all in my cupboard.
Chia seeds,
yeah.
Right? Seeds, nuts, these are pistachios, okay? Sesame seeds, pistachios. I have a huge range of lentils. So there's the brown lentils, the green lentils, red lentils. I also do a lot of dried stuff, lots of dried, okay? So vegetarian or plant-based is not only fruits and vegetables, and I will share with you, I do get clients who come and see me, they want to do plant-based or they want to do vegetarian, not really ready for a meal plan because they think they can do it on their own. I said, that's great. If you have any challenges, come back and see me. And I will share, I did have a CrossFitter coach come and see me, wants to do vegan. And I said, we should sit down and talk about, because vegan is actually an extreme. It's eliminating a lot of foods. And no, I can do it. He bought he went to go buy a vegan protein powder. So remember, it's not only about eating the foods, but we also have to watch those supplements and which supplements we are going to incorporate into our eating. Comes back literally in a week and says, I can't do this. And I said, why can't you do this? Well, all I'm eating is salads and my vegan protein powder. And I said, well, it's beyond eating salads. And it's a variety of foods when we do go vegetarian or plant-based. And those foods are the legumes or whole grains in our diet. Okay, so what are those key nutrients that we need to focus on when we decide to go fully plant-based? So I talk about vegetarian eating or even vegan, is we have to be very mindful of 5 key nutrients. That's protein, it's iron, it's B12, vitamin B12, it's calcium and zinc. And the reason why number 1 is protein is because that protein is needed for continuous development of our cells. It helps to maintain our cells, helps to protect the cell growth. It helps our muscles, not only for growth and development, but for maintenance. If anybody who exercises, we need to repair those muscles that have been active. So we have to make sure that we're getting protein. Does that mean protein right after our workout? Does it mean before? Does it mean throughout the day? Again, it all depends on where you are in your activity level will determine when and how much protein you need. We also need protein for nerve function and immune function. And right now, one of the key things we talk about in the situation we're all living in is protect our immune system. Are you getting enough protein? So that's one of the key things in plant-based eating or vegetarian eating. And if we do go vegan, protein is made out of essential amino acids. And those essential amino acids, if we're following a vegan way of eating, there's only 2 foods that have all the essential ones. Those are soya-based and quinoa. So if we're eating lentils, we're eating black beans, we're eating grains, we need to eat a combination to get all those essential amino acids to be able to help with maintaining and developing our cell growth. It's repairing muscle. It's helping with nerve function. So we have to be extremely mindful that we're getting a combination of those grain foods as well as the beans.
So it's important to mix it up. What about volume-wise? Is there something to think about that in that?
Yes, it's quantity. And when we talk about, and where it's more important is iron and protein is how much do I need? Iron needs, which are found in certain vegetables and lentils and dark beans, we will have to be mindful to get that amount of iron. We need double the amount of iron that is found in plant-based foods. And the reason why we need that double amount is because of the absorption level. Iron is found 2 ways, non-heme and heme. So heme is the one, you think of blood, and you think of things that have blood. Animal sources, and if you think of dark meat, beef, because I have even clients who have chicken, but they're not having enough iron, or they have eggs. Well, think of that dark red color where we get our blood. Chicken breast is very low in iron, and so are eggs, extremely low. So even if you're having eggs and chicken in your diet, the amount of iron that's found in it is quite low. So we need to double the amount of iron that we're getting from lentils. The grains that we're getting, there are fortified grains that we can get to get those needs. B12 is another one that works with iron. Because iron is the carrier of oxygen to our blood, B12 is that other key vitamin that works together to help make those red blood cells. So that B12 is only found in either fortified foods. So if you're going vegan, it will be found, you have to read your labels to find soya-based. So soya milk could be fortified with B12. We have nutritional yeast, which is B12 substitute, are some of those B12, and some prepared cereals. So that's like the Kellogg's, Quaker, oats, and things like that will be fortified with B12. So they work hand in hand, so we have to be extremely mindful of getting that as a supplement. The other key nutrient is calcium. Okay? Typically, you know, we have the use of cows. Not everybody wants to drink cow's milk, which is totally fine. So we have fortified alternatives. We have almond milk and we have soya milk. And they are fortified not only with calcium, they're also fortified with vitamin D. Mm-hmm. So those are the two key nutrients we need to be mindful of, that we're getting enough calcium. Yes, we also find calcium in green leafy vegetables. But with green leafy vegetables, they have what's called oxalates in it. So those oxalates, that it's a natural substance that's found in spinach, it's found in those green leafy vegetables, also bind to the calcium, and we actually, the way we digest it, we only absorb 5% of that. So it's not so easy to follow a vegan way of eating because of the combination of those natural nutrients found in food, that we want to make sure that we're eating properly, and we're eating properly a variety of foods. Because to balance, to get that protein, complete protein, we need those beans, okay, lentils, but we also need grains. So those grain foods come from pasta, pizza, rice. But when I talk about grains, I talk about whole grains. And I'm actually going to share my screen with you. Can you give me access?
I can. Give me a sec here.
I think you have to give me access to share screening.
Yeah, you should have it now.
Okay, all right. All right. So I'm going to show you, okay. When we talk about whole grains, okay, I've got a few containers here. If you can take a look at this, this is farro, okay? It's a whole grain. You can see, I don't know, can people see the size of it?
Yep.
Okay. So the other thing we're very familiar with is a rice grain. It's going all over my computer, okay? So we've got a rice grain. So when you think of rice, you think of the whole grain. You think of farro, you think of the whole grain. I also have oats here. They're steel cut, so they've been cut up. So that's the whole grain, the whole piece by itself. So when we think about that whole grain, it has three key components to make it whole. It is the endosperm, the bran, and the germ. So when we talk about the three parts of it, and I'm actually going to, okay. So when we talk about the bran is where the fiber is, right? Fiber is really, really important, not only plant-based eating, but for everyday overall health. That fiber has a variety of roles, and in our body, not only does it help us to get our bowels going, it actually helps to decrease our blood sugar levels and helps to control our cholesterol levels when we eat an abundance of fiber, okay? So that whole grain will have that fiber on the outer shell. Then we have the endosperm, which is the inside of the grain. And then we have the powerhouse, which is that germ. So when we think of pizza, we think of bread, we think of pasta, majority of it is the flour. And that's what makes that food, okay? It's that flour. So it's the endosperm. What we're missing often is that germ and that bran. So when we buy regular pasta, yeah, it's made with flour, or, you know, it's just a regular bread. So we need to be looking at whole grain. Is that bread that you're buying 100% whole grain? No. Okay, it has whole grains in it. So a variety of whole grains, because there's flour. So all three components have been added back into that bread. So when we look at plant-based eating or vegetarian eating, we got to go back to just the basics of looking at eating the grain in itself, eating your oats, eating your barley, eating your farro, eating your quinoa, because you're getting this powerhouse right here, which is where that protein is, okay? And we get that additional fiber. It's added back in when we buy bread and pasta and things like that, but you're missing on, you could be missing on that germ. So I really try to encourage people, let's look at whole grains as another option to adding into our plant-based way of eating. Because plant-based could also mean, and I did have a client, an athlete as well. He was vegan. He just couldn't kick it up his endurance. And he said, you know, I'm not getting a good workout. He went vegan. Then after assessing his intake, well, his diet is really based on bread, right? Pasta, lots of vegetables. And I said, well, you're missing the powerhouse of your grains. And this is the germ. So we really need to look at it. I said, so let's switch off that pasta and bread, and let's introduce some of these whole grains, introduce some barley, introduce some oats, whole oats, rather than prepared cereal. Get it in the whole form so you know the nutritional power of that food is a lot higher. Okay? Does that make sense? Do people have any questions around that?
So far, so good.
Okay. All right, so those are the key nutrients we need to look at. We've talked about them. So when we look at protein, so you did talk about protein. We know nuts and seeds have protein. And people use a lot of nuts and seeds to add to their foods. I want people to be mindful, nuts and seeds are also 50% fat. So when you're adding half a cup of your almonds to your rolled oats, that's a lot of added fat to it. So when we're looking at nuts and seeds, let's look at that as not only a protein food that we're using, but also fat, that we're introducing fat into that meal. It's not just protein, okay? So things where you're getting high amount of protein are in, let's say, chickpeas. But that's another thing. When we look at chickpeas, it's not 100% protein. It's about 60% of a carbohydrate. So I get clients to say, but I'm eating, you know, my rice with my beans. And when I start to assess their diet could be almost 70% carbohydrates because of the legumes that they're eating. You do need them, 100% we need them, but how do we balance that all out to get a little bit more fat? Because with legumes, any kind, black beans, you're gonna get the carbohydrates very, very low in fat. So now we need to introduce a little bit more fat in that diet. Mm-hmm. So how are we gonna do that? Let's add those nuts and seeds. Let's add those avocados, because we also need the healthy fats at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like some people can almost go the wrong direction with it, like a plant-based or vegan diet, where you were talking about the benefits of like type 2 diabetes and maybe cholesterol and maybe some people it's weight loss. But if you're just having bagels and ice cream, or not ice cream, that's the wrong, but like just like things high in sugar, and just because you think you're not eating meat, you're actually not going to be any further ahead, right? It's like,
no, and not
ways to do it.
And that's the whole thing. Like, plant-based doesn't mean, it could actually be, because there's research that looked at people eating a processed plant-based diet. So that means the cereals, the breads, everything that's been processed, it still all came from the same source, right? But versus the one who actually had meat in their diet, maybe once or two, and the rest of their diet was plant-based. So it's looking at the source in the whole form. Okay, so I just want to share with you, because I'm just mindful of time, is I do have a recipe I did want to share with people, because one of the biggest things is, how do you get started plant-based? And I tell people, don't jump into it and you're going to cut out all your meat or cut out all your fish or cut out all your chicken. I think you have to start with having one vegetarian meal per week. choose if it's meatless Mondays, if it's fearless Fridays, because you're going to bring in those beans into your diet. But I will share with you, when we look at beans and legumes, they're known as a musical fruit, okay? And yeah, so don't jump into having 2 cups of this musical fruit, because your partner, your family is not going to be happy with you the following day. And this happens chili bowl. When do we have Super Bowl Sundays? Is everybody's having chili. Well, the last thing you want to do is be in a room full of men who's just been eating chili for the last 3 hours, because they've never had chili, right? Let's be honest. So I'm going to actually show you quickly a recipe, because I'm mindful of time, that you can do at home. And I think I gave you the recipe. I think I sent it to you. I really love lentils. I think they're versatile, either out of a can or dry. Okay, so quickly I'm going to show you. I got my bowl. Canned lentils. Okay, in a can is about 2.5 cups. I'm going to throw it all in.
Guys, I'll share this recipe with you on the email that I'll send out probably on Friday.
Okay, cucumbers, red peppers, and even though the recipe calls for a cup, you got the whole pepper, use it all. Like, why cut that? Cherry tomatoes, cut them in half. An onion, red onion, throw it in. This is actually called a Greek lentil salad. If you don't have lentils, substitute chickpeas, okay?
I love it. This is like a speedy food show. I love it.
Yes,
Cooking
my
show.
feta cheese. I've actually used a lower fat feta, only because, and I'll tell you, not that I'm into fat-free or low fat, it's because the lower fat has less moisture in it and it's easy to crumble versus being creamy. So the key now is a dressing. So I've put together some oregano, fresh lemon juice, and olive oil. I'm going to pour that in. And give it a toss, okay? My husband's gonna be happy, lunch is done.
Nice. I've always wanted to be part of a cooking show. It's like a dream coming true right now for me.
All right, I'm gonna flip it over, and then in the recipe, it does not have garlic, but being European, I think I need to add garlic to everything that I eat, including my salads. Okay. So I'm going to try to tilt my screen, if you can see that.
Yeah, that's a perfect little lunch there. I like that.
So one thing that is missing, so someone who is vegan, omit the feta cheese. Okay. Also, this recipe has no salt because feta is high in sodium because it sits in brine. So keep that in mind. There's no salt added to this recipe. If you want to substitute the lentils for another bean, go ahead. The other thing this is not a complete meal. So to make it complete, you can either have a grain to go with it. So I would have made a farro because a farro is a whole grain. It's a Mediterranean grain that's used a lot in Greece and Italy. Very hearty, very high in protein. It has the same nutritional profile as quinoa. I think people have overdone it with quinoa and they're bored. And the luxury of using a farro is that you cook it like pasta. You just boil the water and throw it in. And it's very easy. You can throw that when it's cold, and now you have a complete protein and a complete meal. So that's one easy way of starting off. Come up with one vegetarian meal per week, either if it's for your lunch or dinner, okay? We want to focus on building our dinner plate or our lunch plate, half of vegetables. And when we think about how much vegetables do we eat, if you have your dinner plate, regardless of the size of your dinner plate, how big is that dinner plate? Is half of it at least vegetables? That is the minimum. Another tip is we can incorporate a whole grain for breakfast instead of a processed grain. So instead of a cereal, right? Start getting that whole grain at breakfast time. You can also, another tip is build our meals around beans. Slowly though. If you haven't incorporated any beans or legumes in your diet, I strongly suggest you start off with only a quarter of a cup, maximum half a cup. I know it's going to taste good because of what is found in those beans. It has a flatulence factor. So when we sprout them, we decrease that, and it helps to ease the digestive system. So I'm actually very big into sprouting, and I will show you. This is a third of a cup of lentils, day 1. Day 2, my third of a cup, it's already halfway up. That's day 2. Day 3, you can see maybe a little bit of the sprouts starting to grow.
Yeah. A little garden going on there.
Day 4, that's my sprouts.
Cool.
So with sprouting as well, you can throw that to salads. If you're not big into beans, sprout your lentils. It's easier, much easier on the digestive system, for sure. It does not have the same nutrition profile, sprouted versus raw, because you're going to decrease the amount of protein only because you're decreasing the amount of quantity that you consume.
Very cool. I like that little sprouting trick. Are you open to a few questions? And guys, it's this is the time to throw some questions in the chat box. I'll bring it up to Marie's attention.
Sure. I know I rushed it, so.
No, that was good actually. We got about 5 minutes left. Are you okay to address some of the questions from last week?
I know there was one question that it was actually based on this topic. I believe someone had shared that her partner follows paleo, has lost weight, and the other individual has followed plant-based eating, has not. Again, with plant-based eating, it depends. It depends on your caloric intake and the distribution of what you're eating plant-based. Is it heavily carb? Are you getting enough healthy fats in there? Versus when you look at paleo, they've cut back on the carbohydrates. They're only getting your carbohydrates from the minimal amount of carbs that you will find in some vegetables, because following paleo, very little fruit as well, but lots of vegetables, and vegetables are low in carbohydrates. And also when you start paleo, from the beginning, by cutting out grains, you're automatically cutting back calories, and you're automatically going to lose weight, automatically. So that's how, you know, this individual could be has lost weight, because they cut out their bread, their pasta, their rice, cut back calories, lose weight.
Yeah. What about the paleo sugar replacement, like monk fruits, Splenda, Swerve, versus like processed sugars?
Okay, so there's a lot of new substitutes that are out there. And there's not a lot of research that's looking at the benefits, one versus the other. And it's still not clear, even though it's coming from plant-based sources. There is some research looking at some of them may be very similar in terms of how it works with obesity, with the obesity gene. I try to encourage people really to, and this is just my philosophy as a dietitian, is we have to try to change our taste buds. Decrease the amount of sweetness we put into food. There's a use of stevia quite a bit. It's a natural sugar substitute, and it comes from a plant source, but people don't like the aftertaste of that. Okay? Some people like the traditional aspartame that's added. So I try to change people's taste preferences, that, you know what, have that little bit of honey, have a little bit of that maple syrup, because the evidence is not out completely on the use of monk fruit, on using it as a substitute for sweetness. You can use it for sure. And it depends on what your taste preference is. Some people find an aftertaste. Also with monk fruit, they also find digestive issues consuming it. And that's the diarrhea that they're having with it. So it's very individual at the same time.
Can you answer in 1 minute? How did you start sprouting lentils? So what's the process? What's the day? Do you just rinse them once a day?
Oh, so 2/3 or brown or green lentils, and you just fill it up with water. So this one I have not filled in water at all. The site that you're gonna send out with the recipe also has information on how to sprout. So that's why I use a mason jar. One of the key things you need is, you see that on top?
Yeah, the
mesh?
Yeah.
Right? It's just a cheesecloth. Because once you fill this with water, after day 1, I dumped up the water this morning. So that's how much that grew. Dump it out for the day, 24 hours. Okay, the following day, okay, it's gonna look like that. Just add water, rinse it out. Again, my mesh is there. Okay.
So it's the first 24 hours is soaked, and then it's a rinse, repeat for what, 5 days? Okay.
And it depends. You can actually sprout until you have green leaves. I like the crunch, so it still stays a little bit firm, and you can leave it in the fridge for 4 to 5 days. Mine doesn't last that long. I finish it. That's why I have so many jars. I got to get one going because it lasts maybe 3 days. I finish a whole jar.
Cool. So we're officially out of time. We have probably a couple seconds left. I know there's one more question. Sorry we couldn't get to everything. As per usual, this flies by. Thanks again for joining. Really hot topic. I was looking forward to hearing more about that. And I think we're all looking forward to that recipe. So I'll make sure to send that out. This Saturday is the final one. I saved it for last because it's my favorite topic. I'll be talking about concussions with Alex Singh, who was on about 3 weeks ago talking about BPPV, the dizziness one. So if you want to see me fired up, interested about a topic, it's going to be concussions. Saturday is my birthday, so bring your birthday hat. Maybe cake, I don't know, we'll see. But anyways, thanks a lot for joining. See you guys Saturday, and have a good week.
Thank you.